During this video segment, I will show you how you can use some of the reports in Curriculum Track to identify gaps and overlaps within your curriculum. So let's go to the school, and assuming that the teachers have gone through the process of attaching standards to their maps. So for instance, if I go to second grade science and notice this rocks and minerals units has standards attached to it. First report I want to look at that I feel is a very useful one is the benchmarks by course report. And we're going to choose science, and I could choose a particular course, or I'm going to choose all of our science courses. Then what that does is it shows second grade, third grade, fourth grade, and so forth. So if we look more closely at second grade science, notice that there are 23 benchmarks attached to second grade science. There's 23 benchmarks that the second grade teachers should be covering in their science curriculum. Currently, out of those 23, there are 4 of those that are being assessed or being tested on, asking to see some type of evidence that the students have grasped this knowledge. And then there's 8 that are being instructed. And within Curriculum Track, when we say assessed, it's like a hierarchy. And what I mean by that is if we say they're assessed, for instance, this one right here is being assessed 2 different times. If it's being assessed, we assume that it's also being instructed or being taught. So being taught or instructed and being assessed means it's being assessed and instructed. So by looking on the right side here, this allows us to look, for instance, at this benchmark right here. And notice that this benchmark is being instructed in 2 different units within second grade. And if I click on this number, notice that the zeros aren't clickable, but the numbers other than 0 are. If I click on this 2, it'll show me specifically which 2 units in which course are in this course where that is being instructed. That benchmark is being instructed. Notice if we go to the next benchmark down, this particular one is not being instructed or assessed. And maybe there's a good reason for that, but maybe not. So it's really important to have these reports where you can identify those that are not being taught. And that's what we mean by gaps in your curriculum. You know, maybe this is being taught in third grade instead for some reason. That's fine, but we want to make sure we have those discussions then. Notice this next one then is being taught 5 different times. And you know, maybe there's a good reason for that as well. But maybe if I click on that 5, I look at some of these and realize, you know, I don't really have to instruct it again in this unit. It could be covered in another place. It's already being covered 5 times. Maybe I can back off a bit on those. So this report does a nice job of identifying those places where you have your gaps within the curriculum. And if you want to look and see that it's being taught several times in this course, for instance, this is a kindergarten one, and it's being assessed 2 times here, I should probably go to the kindergarten course, which there isn't in my case, but in yours there very likely is. And if I see it's being taught or instructed several times there as well, that would be an example of an overlap. We're both not only instructing but assessing as well. And again, maybe that's okay, but you don't want to have those overlaps over multiple years at the expense of not covering all of the material you should be covering. Another report is the benchmark map. It's really the same type of data, but more of a graphical analysis. And you can look at that at the grade level or the course level. And I typically recommend that if you're looking at high school courses, I like to work at the course level. And if you're going to be working in the elementary environment, I typically like to use the grade map instead. So what this allows you to do is you can select a particular grade, or you could choose all grades. And if I choose all grades, notice it generates this report. It shows all of our benchmarks. And then it shows, in this case, this gray or shading signifies where it should be taught. So the administrators at your school are saying these benchmarks should be taught in second grade. Let's keep going. These should be taught in 3rd grade, and sure enough, there's a 3 here. The SC.3 is telling me it's a 3rd grade. I can expand or collapse that, and so forth. So these are the ones that should be taught in 2nd grade. And then what you can do is you can identify gaps very easily here as well, because if it's shaded in but it's not being instructed or assessed, that means we're not covering it. And so this would be an example of a gap. Here this means it's being instructed, this means it's being assessed in at least one unit within our science curriculum. This now concludes this instructional video.